Summer Breeze hit number 6 on the charts in 1972. Within 8 years, radio stations across America would ban their music entirely. Picture two Texas boys who conquered soft rock, made millions singing about Jasmine in their minds, then watched everything collapse because they chose God over gold. Jim Seals and Crofts weren't just another 70s duo that faded away. They were systematically erased from American airwaves after committing the unforgivable sin of mixing faith with fame. One controversial song about abortion rights triggered death threats, bomb scares at their concerts, and a boycott that obliterated their career overnight. The same fans who bought 4 million copies of their albums suddenly wanted them dead. Radio programmers who'd played Summer Breeze 5 times a day received threatening calls, demanding they never spin another Seals and Crofts record. Warner Brothers executives watched in horror as their golden boys became radioactive. The duo that defined mellow gold for an entire generation got blacklisted so thoroughly that most people under 50 don't even know they existed. This isn't just another cautionary tale about fame's fleeting nature. This is about how two musicians at the peak of their powers chose principle over profit and paid with everything. They went from selling out 20,000-seat arenas to playing county fairs, from private jets to driving themselves to gigs, from millionaires to forgotten men. And unlike other fallen stars who overdosed or self-destructed, Seals and Crofts were destroyed by something far more dangerous than drugs. They were destroyed by conviction. Before we dive deeper into this devastating collapse, if you're fascinated by these untold stories of music's biggest rises and most catastrophic falls, hit that subscribe button. We uncover the brutal truths the industry once buried, and trust me, what happened to Seals and Crofts will shock you more than any rock and roll excess story ever could. Now, let's go back to Clover, Texas, where two kids met at a Pentecostal church social and had no idea they'd one day divide America. Jim Seals was born October 17, 1941, the son of an oil field worker who moved wherever the drilling rigs needed him. Crofts came into the world August 14, 1938. His father a sharecropper who lost everything in the Dust Bowl. These weren't privileged kids with music lessons and grand pianos. Jim learned guitar on a $20 Sears acoustic with 3 strings missing. Built his first drum kit from coffee cans and pie tins. They met through the Champs, the band that gave the world tequila, though neither Jim nor played on that hit. They were replacement players, touring dimly lit clubs for $50 a week, sleeping in the equipment van, eating cold beans from cans. By 1958, they were backing up every act that came through Texas, from rockabilly singers to gospel quartets. Nobody remembers those years except them. The endless highways, the racist motel owners who wouldn't rent to bands with black members, the promoters who stiffed them and disappeared, the nights they played for 8 people in a 500-seat venue. They spent the entire decade of the 60s grinding through different bands and configurations, always broke, always struggling. First came the Dawnbreakers in 1963, where they played nightclubs in Los Angeles for tips and drink tickets. The band collapsed when their drummer overdosed in a Sunset Strip bathroom. Then they formed Southwest FOB with 3 other musicians, thinking the psychedelic movement might finally be their break. They released one album on Elektra Records that sold fewer than 5,000 copies. The label dropped them immediately. By 1969, Jim was 30, married with kids, living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Downey, California, working construction during the day and playing weddings at night. Was 31, divorced, sleeping on Jim's couch, talking about quitting music entirely. They had nothing left except each other and this strange harmonic blend their voices created when they sang together. That's when they decided to strip everything down to just 2 acoustic guitars and their voices. No band, no drama, no splitting the money 5 ways. They called themselves Seals and Crofts because they couldn't afford to design a logo for anything fancier. Talent agent Marcia Day heard them playing at the Troubadour for free drinks and gas money. She got them an audition at Warner Brothers. The label executives sat stone-faced through 5 songs, then offered them the smallest advance in the label's history, $3,000 total, for both of them, for an entire album. They recorded their first album in someone's garage because studio time was too expensive. The album flopped completely, selling fewer than 10,000 copies. Warner Brothers nearly dropped them, but kept them on because terminating their contract would cost more than keeping them. Their second album, Down Home, did even worse. Radio stations wouldn't touch it. Record stores wouldn't stock it. They were playing shopping mall openings for $100, watching teenagers walk past without a second glance. Then came 1972, and everything changed with one song about Jasmine floating through a summer evening. Summer Breeze wasn't even supposed to be the single. Warner Brothers wanted to release another track, but a DJ in Cleveland started playing it, and the phones exploded. Within 3 weeks, it was the most requested song in America. The album went gold in 2 months, platinum by Christmas. Suddenly, they were on every television show, every magazine cover, every radio station. They bought houses with pools, they bought their parents new cars, they thought they'd finally made it. But Jim's brother Dan, who'd been playing in their backing band, was already showing signs of the mental illness that would destroy him. During a show in Phoenix, Dan walked off stage mid-song, drove to the desert, and wasn't found for 3 days. He was hospitalized for paranoid schizophrenia. Jim paid for everything, the best doctors, private facilities, experimental treatments. Nothing worked. Diamond Girl exploded even bigger than Summer Breeze in 1973, reaching number 6 and staying on the charts for 37 weeks. They were selling out Madison Square Garden, the Forum in Los Angeles, every major venue in America. They were grossing $2 million per tour, though after expenses and management fees, they each took home about $200,000. Still, for 2 kids from rural Texas, it was unimaginable wealth. We may never pass this way. Again became their philosophical statement, reaching number 21 while preaching unity and peace. Critics called them lightweight, but fans didn't care. They were the soundtrack to a generation trying to hold on to the 60s idealism as the 70s grew darker. Watergate was unfolding, Vietnam was collapsing, the economy was tanking, and Seals and Crofts were singing about hummingbirds and diamond girls. It was escape music for people who needed to believe beauty still existed. By 1974, they were Warner Brothers' 3rd best-selling act behind only Fleetwood Mac and the Doobie Brothers. They had their own jet, their own recording studio, their own everything. Jim bought a ranch in Costa Rica. Dash bought a compound in Mexico. They were living the dream, but both were growing increasingly uncomfortable with the music industry's excess. They watched friends overdose, marriages collapse, souls get sold for chart positions. That's when they discovered the Baha'i Faith through drummer John Troy's girlfriend. The Baha'i Faith promised unity, racial harmony, and spiritual purpose in a world that seemed to be tearing itself apart. Jim and Dash attended their first meeting in 1973 at a believer's house in Beverly Hills. They were the only white faces in a room full of Persian immigrants and black converts. They felt more at home there than in any corporate boardroom or industry party. Within 6 months, both had converted fully, which meant no drugs, no alcohol, and a commitment to spreading the faith's message of unity. Their record label was horrified. This was the height of rock and roll excess, and their biggest soft rock act had just gone completely sober and religious. But the real problems hadn't started yet. Through 1975 and 1976, they continued having hits while carefully weaving Baha'i themes into their music. Most fans had no idea. The messages were subtle, hidden in metaphors about unity and oneness. They were still selling millions of albums. They headlined the California Jam 2 in 1978, playing to 350,000 people. Everything seemed perfect. They had successfully balanced their faith with their fame. Then came the song that destroyed everything. In 1977, they recorded Unborn Child for their upcoming album. It was an anti-abortion ballad written from the perspective of a fetus pleading for life. In post-Roe versus Wade America, it was like throwing a grenade into a nursery. The song leaked to radio stations before the album's official release. The reaction was instant and violent. Planned Parenthood organized boycotts. Feminist groups picketed their concerts. Death threats arrived daily at their management offices. Someone mailed Jim a box containing a dead rabbit and a note saying his children would be next. Radio programmers who'd championed them for years received bomb threats if they played any Seals and Crofts song, not just Unborn Child, but any song. Warner Brothers executives begged them to pull the track, to apologize, to say it was misunderstood. They refused. They believed they were standing for their principles, for their faith's teaching that life begins at conception. The album containing Unborn Child was released in March 1978. Within 2 weeks, their entire catalog was being pulled from radio playlists across America. Record stores refused to stock their albums. Concert venues canceled shows after receiving threats. The San Francisco show had to be evacuated after a bomb threat. The Detroit show erupted into a riot when protesters stormed the stage. Security guards were hospitalized. Jim was hit in the face with a bottle that required 17 stitches. They finished the tour wearing bulletproof vests, entering venues through loading docks with armed guards. Attendance dropped from 20,000 per show to less than 3,000. They were losing money on every concert. By 1979, they were completely radioactive in the music industry. Warner Brothers quietly declined to renew their contract. No other major label would touch them. Radio programmers openly admitted they'd been threatened with advertiser boycotts if they played anything by Seals and Crofts. The duo that had sold over 20 million albums worldwide couldn't get their music on a single mainstream station. They tried to continue releasing albums on smaller labels through the early 80s, but the infrastructure of fame had been demolished. No radio meant no sales. No sales meant no tours. No tours meant no money. Jim's investments in Costa Rica fell apart during a political upheaval. He lost over $3 million. Dash's Mexican compound was seized by the government in a tax dispute. He lost everything. By 1982, they were both effectively broke, living off rapidly dwindling savings while supporting extended families and Jim's brother's ongoing psychiatric care. They attempted a comeback tour in 1984, playing state fairs and casino lounges. The man who introduced them in Laughlin, Nevada, called them Seals and Crofts. Half the audience was there for the buffet. They made $300 each that night. After expenses, they lost money. Jim's brother Dan committed suicide in 1985, leaving a note that said, "The music stopped making sense." Jim found the body. He never talked about it publicly, but friends said it broke something inside him permanently. They officially disbanded in 1986, though there was no announcement, no farewell tour, no final album. They just stopped. Jim moved to a small ranch in Texas, raising cattle and playing local churches for free. Dash went to Nashville, writing songs for other artists under a pseudonym because his real name was Poison. Nobody would record songs with a Seals and Crofts credit. The soft rock revolution they'd helped create continued without them. Christopher Cross, Michael McDonald, Kenny Loggins, all rode the wave Seals and Crofts had started. But while their contemporaries were playing amphitheaters, Jim and Dash were playing living rooms at Baha'i gatherings. They reunited briefly in 1991 for a 20th anniversary tour that nobody attended. Promoters lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Venues that held 5,000 had fewer than 500 people. In Memphis, they played to 73 paying customers in a 3,000-seat theater. The tour was canceled halfway through. They tried again in 2004, thinking enough time had passed. They were wrong. The internet had made their controversial stance eternal. Every article about them led with Unborn Child. Every review mentioned the Boycotts. A new generation of music fans discovered them only to immediately discover why they'd been erased. They played 6 shows before admitting defeat. The final performance was at the Oregon State Fair to about 200 people, most of whom were there for the pig races happening next door. Jim Seals died on June 7, 2022, at age 80. The man who'd sold millions of albums, who'd defined a genre, who'd stood on the world's biggest stages, died in obscurity. Most obituaries ran a few paragraphs. Classic rock stations that had once played Summer Breeze hourly didn't even mention his passing. Dash Crofts, now 85, lives alone in Nashville. He hasn't performed publicly in over a decade. In a rare 2020 interview, he said, "We made our choice. We stood for something. It cost us everything, but we'd do it again." He receives about $14,000 a year in royalties, mostly from Summer Breeze being used in commercials. The millions they made are long gone. But here's the cruelest irony of all. Summer Breeze still generates over $2 million annually in royalties. It's been covered by over 300 artists. It's in dozens of movies and TV shows. The song that made them famous continues making money for everyone except them. They signed away most of their publishing rights in 1982 when they desperately needed cash. Warner Brothers owns their master recordings. They get songwriter royalties only, split between them and their former manager, who they couldn't afford to buy out. Every time you hear Summer Breeze in a commercial or movie, somewhere a corporation makes money off 2 men they helped destroy. That's the music industry's ultimate revenge. The Baha'i Faith. They sacrificed everything for barely acknowledges them today. They're not mentioned in official histories or celebrations. The religion they thought would embrace them as musical ambassadors quietly distanced itself from the controversy they brought. They gave up millions of fans for a faith that didn't want the baggage they carried. Both sides abandoned them. The secular world hated them for being religious. The religious world was embarrassed by their past. They fell into the crack between worlds and disappeared. Think about that next time you hear Summer Breeze on the radio, which still happens about 40 times a day across America. Those jasmine-scented memories, that blowing through the jasmine in my mind, it's all that's left of 2 men who had everything and chose to throw it away for principles. Whether you agree with their stance or not, and most didn't, you have to acknowledge the price they paid. They went from defining a generation's soundtrack to being erased from it, from millionaires to forgotten men, from summer breezes to permanent winter. This is what happens when you challenge the machine. The machine doesn't just defeat you, it erases you. It continues profiting from your work while ensuring you're too toxic to benefit from it. Seals and Crofts weren't destroyed by drugs, or ego, or excess. They were destroyed by conviction, which in America's music industry might be the most dangerous drug of all. Look at every artist who's taken a controversial stand, really taken one, not the approved rebellions that sell records, but actual positions that threaten profit. They don't just fall from grace. They're systematically dismantled. Radio bans, boycotts, death threats, financial destruction, personal destruction. Then historical revision until most people don't even remember they existed. Seals and Crofts sold 20 million albums. They had 11 songs in the top 40. They defined soft rock for half a decade. And most people under 50 have never heard of them beyond maybe recognizing Summer Breeze without knowing who sang it. That's not accidental. That's deliberate. That's the industry protecting itself by making examples of those who step out of line. The message is clear. Make your music, take your money, keep your mouth shut about anything that matters. Or end up like Jim Seals, dying in obscurity while your biggest hit makes millions for the people who destroyed you. Before you go, if you want to keep discovering these buried truths about music's biggest stars and most devastating falls, hit that subscribe button. We dig where others won't, uncovering the stories the industry hoped would die with the artists. Because someone needs to remember. Someone needs to tell the truth about what really happens when you don't play the game. And sometimes, like with Seals and Crofts, the price of principle is everything you ever worked for, everything you ever achieved, and everything you ever were.